Knock knock.
Oh, love starting with some comedy. Okay, knock knock. Okay, who's there?
Armageddon.
I'm getting sick of this coronavirus. Am I right? Wait, is that your? Wait,
Did
sorry,
you read
ask
my
me again.
notes?
Ask me again.
Did you read my note? Why'd you do that? Why did you do that?
I didn't read your note. You're not original. This is all over Twitter, mate. Just because
No,
you saw a
it's not.
joke somewhere else doesn't mean that you're the only person who saw it.
Can't you just play along?
I did
for
play along.
once? No, you didn't.
I did.
You
You
fucking
wanted
didn't.
me to. You wanted me to take part in a joke. Here I am,
Do you know
ready
how-
to take part.
It's the second time you've done that in like a couple of months. I would never do that to you.
You constantly no but all of my improvs.
I don't know. That was pretty mean, to be honest.
Okay, let's just let's start fresh. Hang up.
No,
Hang up.
I want everyone to hear how mean you are to me.
You better fucking hang up this podcast right now, or I'm gonna leak those nudes that you sent me. And I know that you're proud of them, but as an objective
fucking proud of
outsider,
them.
let me just
They're
say
good nudes.
they're not going to go down the way that you think they will.
All the way. There's a joke there.
Well, do you want to
probably
tell
spoil
that
that one
one
too.
instead?
No, let's just move on.
Ruined comedy for you.
I was so excited about that. It really was.
But it wasn't your joke, was it?
It was. Well, you know, it wasn't. The last line of that joke was my joke.
Okay.
But the Armageddon and a bit, whatever. That was someone else's, yeah.
Okay.
But they probably got it from someone else. So,
Yeah.
and they didn't have a fucking friend to step in the way and
What was
Make them-
what was your end bit going to be?
Armageddon a bit worried about all this coronavirus. You basically said it word for word.
Yeah.
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 Comedy
Well,
is
at least
not
at least we had that shot,
Yeah.
Put a stamp on it.
I thought it was going to be really.
You're going to hit the ground running this time.
Yeah. Well.
How did you feel listening back to last time's episode about that hard start? Because we're back into the slow ramp up now, and I just I want to know whether you'd commit to it long term, whether you felt like an idiot for suggesting it.
I was happy to have tried it.
Okay, well I'm glad to have taken part.
Speaking of which, I was walking through a park the other day, and it's like Sunday afternoon, walking through this park. It was just filled with kids, and I became acutely aware of the fact that I was the only one there without a kid, and I was like kind of dressed in like it was a bit daggy and stuff. I just wanted to like go for a walk, and so I just got out my phone and just pretended to be on my phone so I didn't look like a pedophile.
I don't think that would have helped.
I don't know if it did, but if I'm distracted by my phone while I'm around kids, then I'm probably not attracted to them.
Yeah,
Well, I'm not like consumed with
attraction.
attraction. So
Yeah.
that was my logic there, just to put the parents at ease.
Yeah. And did you feel like you were getting stares from people, or was this all internal?
I think it was all in my head. I think
Yeah.
it was all in my head. But I was like, the fact that I'm doing that is it's like when you might have this as well, but have you ever gotten off the tram at the same time as like a young woman, and then you need to go like a certain way, and you've like accidentally started like following them, and you're
Yeah.
like, fuck,
Yeah.
I just want to go up and say, hey, I'm not a rapist, but then that would probably make things worse.
Yeah.
know?
What I do in that situation is like either just slow down or speed up.
Yeah,
Like I try and
but
do
speeding up's scary for them.
No, I don't know. I don't think so. As long as you
When you
because
started hearing
remember,
footsteps going really quick.
Yeah, but remember they can't see you. And the moment that you're past them and moving on, then they can see you, and then it's like in
Yes.
their control.
Yes, you need to be in front of them.
Yeah.
I've just completely walked the other way. I'll just
I mean,
just go
that's
for
the
it.
other thing. Sometimes if you like have variations in the route that you could take, I just go a different way.
Yeah,
I cross, like if someone's coming like my direction on a footpath as well, I'll, cross the street if they're black.
Okay. Oh, okay. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
I like it.
That's what we call a misdirect.
Yeah, that
Comedic
misdirected me. That was
welcome to Deep Thought, everybody. Hey, good to have you with us. Trying times, interesting times, and you're still here, so that's very nice of you. This is a podcast in which we reassure everyone about the integrity of society through the privileged eyes of two white men sitting through the internet with us. Michael, say hi, Michael. Oh God! Oh, it's in my mouth. Oh God! And I'm Nick. Oh God! I Nick.
Oh, that looks good on the audio.
Yeah, that's peaked. Hey Ben.
Pretty good. I've got a quick story. If you want me to kick off with a story, you want to end with a story?
Let's kick off with a story.
Kick it off. All right. So I was at dinner the other night with my friend Casper and my friend Ben. Not my brother. We were out at this Indian restaurant called Horn Please, and
called Horn.
We ordered
Please.
Horn Please. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a kind of a swanky Indian place, like a little bit like upmarket, but still like casual dining.
Yeah.
Anyway, the restaurant was full. We order our meals, and probably about 5 minutes after we order our meals, we hear this like huge commotion coming back from the back of the restaurant, like huge, like swearing. And we look over, the whole restaurant stops talking. They look back. There's this like guy, probably around my age, just going, "I wanted more fucking chili. I asked just 2 times more fucking chili." And he's flipping chairs.
Whoa.
And smacking down on someone else's table, some other table's table. Whoa, took my headphones there. And he's just going ballistic, asking for more chili. And his dad, I think it was his dad, was trying to like push him away, push him out of the restaurant. And this guy is just fucking screaming. It's like kind of scary. Anyway, they get him out of the restaurant, and the waiter comes over with our food and stuff, and we're asking if they're okay. I made a joke. I said, "Can I get a bit more chili?" And she was like, kind of nervously laughed. Didn't really get it. And then we were talking to them about it, and they were like, "Yeah, but he's actually just outside still, so we still don't know if the threat's gone." And we look out the window, and he's just going, like, he's doing something with his hands and stuff. He's looking manic.
He was looking inside the restaurant, or he was like sort of raving on the street, right?
He looked like he was yelling, but we couldn't hear him, and he kept like holding up his phone to the window, but it looked like there was nothing on the phone. Sorry,
can you just backtrack a second for me? Did you say that he was like escorted out of the building, or he got up and stormed out, or
no? He was escorted out by his dad. Right. I think it was his dad, or the guy that he was with.
Yeah.
And then, so we eat our food, and then after we eat our food, about 10 minutes after that, this guy comes storming back in, crazier than before. They had this like gimmicky little horn, like a thing with a tooty horn at the front, because it's like a horn, yeah, one of those ones. And he is behind the bar, blasting it in this like, it's probably like 15-year-old Indian kid who's just like in his thing. He's probably his first job. Yeah. And he's just looking down. Man, if you could have seen this kid, it was so like sad. And he's just like looking down while this guy, he doesn't know what to do. He's just like, this guy is just blasting this horn and screaming and shit. Anyway, me and Casper was like, we're the closest table to where this is happening.
Yeah.
And you can see, we're looking at the back of the restaurant. The head chefs are like noticing the commotion and starting to storm up, like just some big burly Indian guys. And we're just like, I don't know, should we step in here? And we were like, yeah, I guess we should like try and help. And so we try and like get this guy out of the restaurant without like manhandling him or I don't know, getting hit ourselves or whatever. And I was probably like, 20 centimeters away from his face. I'm like looking at him. He's like, while he's yelling, I'm yelling at him. Yeah. If he had I was definitely in not the safe zone.
Okay.
As we say now.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I had a bit of drink. I was yelling at him, what the fuck are you doing? That's what I kept yelling over and over. That's what came to my head.
Yeah.
And he's just like screaming with like, he didn't seem that scary, like face to face. Like, certain situations, I'll get scared sometimes when there's no one even there.
Yeah.
But
ghosts.
In this situation, might have been the booze, might have been because I'm the fucking man, but I was not scared at all.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting this guy out, locked the door, and waited for they called the police, escorted them off.
Yeah.
And that was the last. So that was...
So do you think he was like, I don't know, like on cocaine or something, or what?
We spoke to the staff about it, and they said that before he went crazy the first time, the guy that he was with, probably his dad, went up to the staff and said, "Can I get the check? I think this guy is like taking something, and I want to get him out of here before he starts like losing it."
Right.
So it looked like he took something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, look on you. Good for you stepping in as bloody, man. A defender of the restaurant.
Yeah, and the food was really good. Didn't get any discount.
Oh,
was hoping for a bit of discount.
But maybe they were still just in shock. And if next time you go back, maybe there'll be like a security camera picture of you up on the wall, like hero, safe store, life membership, platinum member, free naan,
Yeah, that would be great if there was like a security screenshot of my face.
Yeah.
But it just says, "Who is this man? We want to thank him."
He's great.
Like really small print down the bottom.
Have you seen this man? Because he's great.
Yeah. That's best case scenario.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was...
Was there a part of you in the moment in which you're screaming, "What the fuck are you doing?" at this guy, that in your head was like, "I'm just making this worse. Like now I'm also a person screaming at another person in the restaurant."
Yeah. Yes. There was that.
Like
and
halfway
like I said,
through, were you like, "Do I keep up with this? Do I need a different tact? Is this working?"
I was thinking about it later, like what... I don't know what I was hoping to achieve there, because I wasn't going to like manhandle this guy, because that probably would have escalated things. But there was a little bit... Casper and I were talking about this after. There was a little... And it's probably not... there was a little bit of like white guilt in some way. Like I felt like we were like the white guys there, and then this guy was white, and all the staff were like Indian, and I was just like, you're making it really shit for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was being necessarily racist, but that was like something that was swirling in my head.
Yeah. Was the dad like embarrassed? Was he trying to do anything for this kid? How come it was going off for so long?
I don't know. It looked like he was aware of that there was a problem, and then he looked like he got this guy out before it kicked off. But then he just fucked off. Like he obviously just left his son there. If it was a son.
Oh, so the dad wasn't there when the guy was mucking around outside.
No, the dad just fucked off. Which is, I mean, I don't know. This guy didn't look like he was. I mean, he looked like real. Like I saw him before in the restaurant. I didn't take note of him, but he just looked like a guy that would be at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, but pretty scary.
Yeah.
I'm a hero. Yeah, but good food though. I got the fish coconut curry. I did actually ask for the curry to be hot. This is before all this happened.
Yeah.
And they said no.
Oh.
Which they were like,
it comes as it comes. They're not a customizer. Yeah.
No, which kind of pissed me off, but I don't know.
What you gonna do?
I kind of just bottled up my feelings.
Yeah, like a real human.
Exactly.
If you got a problem, just don't go back to the restaurant,
Yeah. Anyway, that's my story. You got a story?
No, I don't really. It was 1 year since the March 15 shooting in Christchurch yesterday. I was going to go to the memorial service, but then my friend Simon, who works as a video journalist, he was down from Auckland for the a couple of days in the lead up to the event, because there was going to be some various there was a Friday prayer for the Muslim community, and then this thing on Sunday that Jacinda was going to be at, and he'd sort of said, actually the Muslim community doesn't really look backwards in that way. They don't really memorialize loss. They sort of, it's not a big deal for them. It's more for everyone else in the city, I guess, than something that they were actively sort of putting forward. And sort of the Friday prayers was more when they would have addressed it, I think.
That's weird, having a kind of a vigil thing in the Corona age.
Well, that's the thing. In the end, it got cancelled, so they didn't hold it anyway. But I'd sort of by that point decided, well, combination of Corona plus there had been a little bit of a swelling of white supremacist, action in New Zealand in the month prior. They'd arrested someone who was agitating a little bit, and so a little bit of a thought of, well, who knows, maybe let's take the opportunity to try something again. Plus, when I found out from Simon that it wasn't really a thing that was of huge significance to the actual affected community, I thought, okay, I'll just give it a pass. And then in the end, it didn't go ahead anyway. But it was interesting to think how quickly that year had gone. And how unified. It was an interesting dynamic yesterday, because I still went out, I wandered around for some lunch. And it was like this strange dynamic of simultaneously a sort of sense of community. I don't know whether this is just internal projection or whether it was actively, out there in the other people I was encountering. But in the immediate aftermath of it a year ago, there was definitely a sense of Christchurch coming together to both protect that community and mourn for it, and to say this is not actually who we are or who we want to be as a country. And I felt a little bit of that yesterday. Again, we're still a city that's come together multiple times over the years with the quakes and everything as well. And yet simultaneously, there's also this creeping pandemic. So it was a simultaneous feeling of we're all coming together, but at the same time, don't get too close to anybody.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah, I don't know what it feels like over there yet. I don't think either Australia or New Zealand have really been properly beset by too much in the way of cases yet. But watching this all sort of play out internationally, with all the sport and entertainment stuff shutting down, late night shows going off, New Zealand has mandated a 14-day self-isolation for any international traveller arriving in New Zealand. So anyone who gets there has to go self-isolate for 2 weeks.
So is Australia.
Is that right?
Yeah.
There's preventative action to stop it really getting in, I think, is their goal, because it's still relatively minor here. Yeah. But I saw someone today describe it kind of as feeling like that week between Christmas and New Year's, where a lot of stuff is shut down and you've got all this kind of weird limbo days where no one's really on holiday, but everyone's not in their normal schedules, and I'm interested to see whether or not both of our countries can kind of avoid that, or whether we too will enter this period in which everything shuts down for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing, I don't know about there, but there's nothing really left on the shelves that's non-perishable, really.
At your supermarkets?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Ours are still very well stocked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had to line up to get into a supermarket. There was a queue.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they minimizing the number of people in there at once?
Yes, they were. But then we went in there. It was a Whole Foods thing, so it was it's one of those. It was still a supermarket, but it was a Whole Foods thing, organic store that Emma wanted to go get some sourdough yeast actually. So we lined up to go in there for about 10 minutes, and then they had nothing in there. They didn't tell us that at the start of the line. But yeah, I went out for ramen the other day. They took my temperature before they went in.
How?
Before I went in, they had one of those temperature checkers.
Yeah, but there are so many different ways. So they shove a thing in your ear, forehead.
They shoved it in my ass. They touched it on my forehead or something.
Wait, so in your ass and then on your forehead. That seems unhygienic.
Yeah. I didn't have any questions.
Like, hey man, do what you got to do.
Yeah. But that was interesting, getting temperature checked.
Yeah, I didn't realize the supermarkets were so. Have you been to a Woolworths?
Yeah, all the pasta's gone,
Huh.
except the gluten-free pasta, which is funny that people would rather die than starve
Eat
than
the GFP,
eat gluten-free. But bread's gone, eggs are gone. Woolworths are shutting on Wednesdays. On Wednesday now, they're just shutting
All
on Wednesday
Woolworths.
night. Yeah, so they can restock.
Oh, okay, interesting. I saw that they've introduced a safety hour for old people and the infirm, so that they can get some stuff without being swarmed out. That makes sense. The one other thing while we're on the topic of the Ronnie V, I don't know if people are familiar with the software called Folding at Home. Does that mean anything to you?
Nah.
Folding at Home is a distributed computer processing network. It's what is like SETI. Do you know SETI?
Search for extraterrestrial.
Yeah, SETI at Home was that program that you could put on your computer. It would like scan parts of the sky and look for habitable planets. Did you ever?
Oh, what?
You ever hear about that? Oh, it was very big in the early thousands. Whole idea of this software is basically there are things which take lots of computer cycles, right? CPU power, processing power, GPU power, to just scan data. And you can have like supercomputer farms, and that's very expensive. And research organizations and universities and that sort of thing don't necessarily have unlimited research power. Or access to these computing networks. So there's this software called Folding at Home, which basically diversifies and disseminates that processing out into the background for computers around the world. So you can basically donate your computer's processing speed when it's not being used to chug away and solve whatever, research needs to be processed. In SETI's case, that was taking images of, satellite images and scanning them for relevant indicators that there might be a planet there or something like that. Folding at Home was specifically set up to do things like model proteins that might prove useful as, like cancer related vaccines and that sort of stuff. But what they've just put out at Folding at Home, and there's this thing called Rosetta at Home, which is the same kind of thing. They have uploaded coronavirus related projects to these sites. So if you are interested in helping out, you can download a little piece of software on your computer and enable it to run in the background when you're not using it. And it will then take this project file and basically model the proteins and the vaccine shape and that sort of stuff, and try and find potential vaccine solutions or help scientists locate sites that might be, susceptible to manipulation, this kind of thing, all automatically, all in the background. And the project has already found I think there was one solution that Rosetta at Home found that has proven useful in the search for the coronavirus vaccine and cure. It's really cool.
Cool. Do they have any idea about? Do they have any leads on a vaccine at all?
I think it'll still take, a couple of years for it to happen. I think one of the things with the vaccine is actually not finding something that'll kill the virus. It's finding something that'll kill the virus and then not kill the person. So that's what takes a lot of that time, that lag time in bringing it to market, is making sure that there are no potential interactions with the human body or with other, parts of your system that cause as many problems as it cures. But yeah, so the Rosetta stuff's really interesting. I don't have maybe I should just bring it up quickly. I'll see if I can find that article.
Yeah.
We're happy to report the Rosetta molecular modeling suite was recently used to accurately predict the atomic scale structure of an important coronavirus protein weeks before it could be measured in the lab. Knowledge gained from studying this viral protein is now being used to guide the design of novel vaccines and antiviral drugs. So it's already having positive implications. So I would encourage anyone out there, you don't even have to be technologically literate, but if you've got a decent PC or a Mac, jump onto Folding at Home or Rosetta at Home and grab the software and donate some of your spare computing power to help fight and create a vaccine, and get credit for it if your computer's the one that does the crunching that finds the cure. You'll get to be the person. They'll give you that.
It's funny, this thing, how it's escalated, isn't it? I mean, the first one we did 4 weeks ago, the episode when we did, you were asking if I was worried about it and stuff, and I was so flippant about it then, and then it's just rapidly escalated over the last week, especially, and even the last pod that we did a couple of weeks ago talking about it. It's just it's proper now. Emma's birthday's in a couple of weeks. So her parents were going to fly down from Scotland and stuff. Now they can't do that, and we had flights booked out of Italy this year in September, and it's we're going to go back to Europe for a wedding and stuff, and we're just don't know what we're going to do.
Sorry,
you go.
I was saying last episode that Mark's girlfriend was kind of unsure and potentially staying in their house. Well, now because New Zealand's put this thing where when you come in you have to self-isolate for 14 days, that effectively kills that trip. So, after all the ups and downs.
Wait, so she hasn't gone on the trip yet?
No, she hasn't left yet. It would be in a couple of weeks. But if she was to come, she'd have to sit in a room by herself for 2 weeks anyway. So it's just not worth it. I think it won't happen.
So my sister actually got sent home from work today. She lives here in Melbourne. She got sent home from work because she had a cough, and there was no chances to get to the doctor now. She went to the doctor. The doctor was like, "We can't really test for coronavirus here, but you need to. It's some test that you can sign up for to do, but you really need to self-isolate now." So I think I was working from home today. My brother got sent home from work today. Everyone's working from home. The internet was super slow. I'm actually pretty surprised at how
we're doing okay,
well it's holding up. It's everything's stopped. It's so weird. I've never seen anything like this happen in my lifetime.
The interesting thing as well, that some of the data that's come out, people have been saying for a while now, it's not really affecting the young, it's not really affecting 20 to 29s, but some of the data is showing now that they are still infected at higher quantities perhaps than some of the older generations, because they're active, they're out and about, they're going places, they're in crowds and clubs and restaurants and that sort of stuff, but they don't know about it because it doesn't present with symptoms immediately. So there's been this big kind of push telling people go home, stay home, right? And this is particularly the case over in America, where they've got real fucking crisis on their hands because Trump is so incompetent. But even here, I think we're going to see more and more people saying, just don't go out, because you might not know that you have it. And even if you're fine, you're at risk, sharing it to other more vulnerable or immunocompromised people. And that's a hard thing to sort of tell.
It is.
Tell 20-somethings that just because you don't see any symptoms, you have to, for the good of society, make a minor sacrifice.
Yeah. I was out getting a coffee this morning, and I was coming back, and there was a runner coming from the side street, and just as he passed, just as we kind of almost crossed, he sneezed, kept running, and I walked straight into a sneeze. And I was like, "Fuck you, man."
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably just hay fever, but
Yeah.
I was like, God, everyone's so hyper aware.
Yeah, now all of a sudden you realize how
Germs
gross
now.
all of society is as well. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
why did we do this?
yeah,
The I saw someone tweet something along the lines of, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, what was asked of people our age was to go overseas and fire at children and then die in a ditch, right? And what is being asked of our noble sacrifice currently is to stay home and watch Netflix for a bit. It's not that hard a sacrifice.
Well, it is kind of. Well,
Okay.
I mean, it's not comparable, yeah, but it is. It's pretty.
It's not
Have
that
you
it's
seen those
not
scenes
an
of like?
inconvenience, but it's like, come on, what are you really missing out on here?
Yeah, I'm sure some people are stoked about it. Have you seen those scenes of people in like Milan and stuff? They're out on their terraces, like all the neighbors. They're all in quarantine, and they're all singing songs with each other and stuff. And that stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
So I had an idea that we could basically map out our musical path in terms of taste, because we have a you and I have a similar-ish taste in music, but I'm interested to hear like where you're started from, like the first band right through to now, and who are the big players and the big influences, or the big guys for you in your life.
I think it's interesting as well. I don't want to jump to the end, but I think that, well, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm very curious to know how close you think our musical tastes are.
Yeah, okay. Well, what do you mean?
Currently, I'm just curious as to how much do you think our tastes actually overlap?
Not that much.
Yeah.
Actually.
I think that's increasingly true. I think there was a period in which our train tracks were sort of on the same path for a while.
I think it was just Radiohead. It was like
Possibly.
Radiohead, because they're probably both of our favorite bands. So that's it
something. Underpins everything. But I think there was also, through the late thousands and the first half of the tens, I think we were seeing a lot of like gigs, bands at the same time. We're going to live shows, and I think that overlap was more the case. But I think nowadays we've sort of headed off in different tangents again. But again, we'll get to that, I suppose. Well, why don't you kick us off? Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got a pretty obsessive personality.
What?
You done?
I was done for quite a while.
I've got a pretty obsessive personality. Okay. So my first obsession was Michael Jackson. I was like, I bought my parents. I think I was probably 6 or 7. I remember distinctly my parents giving Ben and I both $20 each. It was probably back then it was $10 each, and they said you can buy any CD that you want. And I bought Michael Jackson's Greatest Hits, which is a double CD. It had like 32,000 songs on it. And Ben bought John Farnham. And
why?
I think he was trying to impress my parents.
No,
because he was like, "Hey, what do you think? I like John Farnham."
At what age? 5?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
My question before you get too much further is, did you buy this randomly, or did you know before this point who Michael Jackson was? Like, how did you know to get this? Was this just a random pluck off the shelf?
I can't remember. I don't think it would have been. I think I would have known. I think I would have recognized.
Maybe heard on the radio a little bit or something.
Maybe I just knew the name. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I just knew that album inside and out, would just thrash it, and I got obsessed with Michael Jackson. Would hire his music videos when I went to Blockbuster and stuff and like copy all
You
the
could
moves. That's why.
hire a music video.
Yeah. Well, you could hire Michael Jackson like movies, but it'd be like he used to do these movies that were compiled of like music videos.
Right.
Yeah.
And you'd do the moves.
Do the moves. You've probably seen me do the moves a few times. See that head movement?
Yeah. Just makes my neck feel sore.
Yeah, mine's next. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So that was that. I used to like dance. I used to like do like a Michael Jackson dance at like assembly sometimes. I was like the Michael Jackson guy. I used to have like a hat.
Were you volunteering?
Yeah,
or were
like,
they
do a
like,
performance.
okay, we've got a spare 5 minutes. Michael, you got that glove?
Yeah, it was a time filler. Embarrassingly, I did that in high school. Actually, I did a few Michael Jackson performances in high school. I don't know.
At assemblies?
It was like assembly. Yeah, it was like kind of like
Or
assembly.
like music concerts?
No, it was like at assembly.
Like prayer. Well, the chaplain was doing the prayer. You would just get up and silently moonwalk behind him.
I think it would be sometimes we'd be like have to get into like teams, like our house teams, and they'd be like, you have to come up with like a skit or a performance, and I'd be like, I'll do Michael Jackson. I'll be Michael Jackson.
Right.
And they'll be like, you did that last year, and I'd be like, I know.
There's new
and
songs.
they'll be like, maybe something else, and I'd be like, how about Michael Jackson?
Why mess with something that ain't broken?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that never really went away. Michael Jackson still hasn't. Don't know if I believe the. I don't believe
He's
I
still
believe that
alive.
all that hoo ha.
He's still out there.
No, not about his death.
You don't believe he's dead, or you do believe he's dead, just not that
dead.
he was like
Yeah.
a bit of the old pedophile.
Yeah. The old PD. But I don't know.
I think you're
about
letting your lifelong love for this man color your impression.
I know. I probably am. All right. So after Michael Jackson, then I got. That was the first one. The second one was probably Savage Garden. This is a bit embarrassing. This one got big. What is that face? Is a smug.
I'm look. I don't want to spoil myself, but that was me
Did you have
nodding.
one?
I had the
Oh, yeah?
Savage Garden debut album.
Yeah, affirmation.
Is that what it's called?
I believe in
A song. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Is that the song or the album though? What was the
That's the
album called?
song. Maybe it was called affirmation.
Maybe it's just called Savage Garden. I think the first one was just self-titled.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Anyway,
Savage Garden was a big one. I remember my dad being annoyed when I stopped. When I think I realized that they weren't cool, and I was like, I don't like Savage Garden anymore. And then
you switched to
He was
Natalie
like-
Imbruglia.
I switched to Natalie. And then then I was really into Coldplay for a big. Coldplay were a
Wasn't
defining
Travis?
band.
Did you do Travis first or after
So-
Coldplay?
It was Coldplay. I remember I think it was from the library because I used to go to the Unley Library, and you could just get CDs there, and then I realized that you could just burn them at home, and
And you had it
then I was like,
forever.
how is this legal? I mean, it probably wasn't legal, but I was like, how is anyone allowing me to do this? It's like, I'm just going to burn everything.
Yeah.
And so it was Coldplay. I got Parachutes that blew my mind at the time. And then from that, it was like all this Brit pop stuff, which was like Travis, Keane, The Verve. Never Oasis. Always hated Oasis for some reason. Still do.
Wow.
Don't like their attitude.
Okay, let me give you a scenario. You're at a wedding exclusively with white people.
Nice.
And it's towards the end of the night, everyone's on the dance floor, they've done the dance, you're, maybe one or two drinks in, and, it's 11:30 at night, you're halfway through your second beer, and a bit of Wonderwall comes on.
Yeah.
Are you getting on the dance floor? Are you singing along? Are you going to sit down?
No.
What if you're
No.
on the dance floor?
No. I'm going to leave.
You're on the dance floor,
Oh.
it comes on, you go and sit down.
This
You
has
don't even
happened
sort
before.
of kind of nod your way along.
Well, it
Sort
depends.
of wait it out, see what comes next.
I wouldn't really do that. I really hate Oasis.
Okay.
And I would probably let everyone know. I want everyone to know that I hate Oasis.
You want them to
so I'd probably leave in a huff, to be honest.
Okay, you take the opportunity to go get, a third
My
drink.
my third beer by 11:30. If I could even make it to the bar.
Yeah.
So yeah, went through massive Britpop. Britpop was defining. Also, Coldplay was massive.
That was the era as well. Like that wasn't just
Yeah.
you. That was a wave that was flooding through all of music at that time.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think that wasn't just you stumbling across something unknown. I think like Coldplay did hit big then. That was top of the charts in a way that like it defined pop music for a while.
But Travis had come out with "Why Does It Always Rain on Me" and stuff. That predates. That was probably like 10 years before. So the Britpop wave probably started around like 96 or 97.
Well, I mean, yeah, that was when sort of OK Computer and stuff came out as well. So there was, that, I guess, international attention on that scene, maybe.
Yeah. What year did Parachutes come out? Would that be I'm going to guess 2000?
99, maybe? 2000.
Yep. And once you do yours, I want to talk to you a little bit about Coldplay as well, because there's such a weird relationship with them. And it's so like, anyway. So then there was
still
that.
Not returning Chris's calls?
He was on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm the other night.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
As himself.
As himself. You don't watch Curb?
I don't.
Fuck,
I've seen some Curb, but no.
He's Larry David is like basically making fun of him. He's like, Chris Martin's like, I'm gonna go play in a few minutes. You want to stick around for the performance? And then Larry David's like, nah. Anyway, good impression, that one.
Yeah.
And then so after the Britpop,
isn't he actually related to Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, I think he is.
And
he's playing him on
I
SNL.
know. It's awesome.
Yeah. So the Britpop, I was probably around 14, 15, 16. Then I found Radiohead. So I was probably, start of year 12, maybe the end of year 11. So one of Ben's friends had like a burnt copy of the Bends. No, OK Computer. And I remember listening to OK Computer and just being like, this is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Rinsing that and then becoming obsessed. Then did you ever download it on LimeWire?
Oh, yeah.
Just going to LimeWire, typing in Radiohead, and then downloading
every track.
Yeah. Everything, the bootlegs, the whatevers.
Yeah. Half the stuff which was viruses, half the stuff which was mislabeled other bands.
Yeah. a lot of those.
Yeah.
I remember I had like a Triple J CD thing. They had everything in its right place.
Oh, right, yeah.
It might have been. I don't know what it was. I can't imagine.
It might have been the 2001 Hottest 100 or something like that.
I can't imagine everything in its right place making it on there, but
I don't know.
I remember hearing that and that was my first introduction to electronic music. That's the sound of those keys were the warmest thing I've ever heard in my life at that point.
Yeah. Everything in its right place, 42. Triple J's Hottest 100 2000. And there's a couple of, I typed 2001, and there's a couple of Amnesiac ones on there as well.
That is crazy to think about now. You'd never get that now.
What do you reckon? Who do you reckon had a higher number on the Triple J's Hottest 100 of the year 2000? Coldplay or Radiohead?
What was Coldplay's song?
No, you tell me first and then I'll tell you.
2001?
This is 2000.
I reckon it's probably In My Place or Don't Panic.
So, Radiohead, 42, Everything in Its Right Place. Coldplay, number 5 with Yellow. Coldplay, Yellow, number 5 on the Triple J Hottest 100.
Wow. Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah.
They'd never allow that now. But this is the thing about Coldplay. Coldplay were good. I mean,
Well,
they
Shiver is in 63 as well. There's 2 Coldplay songs on that. Hottest
crazy.
100.
They didn't have the I don't know. I don't really understand this negativity. What do you think it is? with
Should we
Coldplay?
save this? We'll come back to Coldplay
Yeah.
at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I probably should speed up this thing.
That's
So Radiohead. Then through
16.
Radiohead, it was the Smiths.
Okay.
I got obsessed with the Smiths because they did a cover of Headmaster Ritual on those basement sessions.
I was just I'm not very familiar with the Smiths at all. And weirdly, I ended up today watching a video, which I think was on the official Smiths YouTube channel. Is it a real song? Something about girlfriend in a coma or something like that. Is that a real song?
Girlfriend in a coma, I know, it's serious.
Yeah. Is that a real song?
Yeah.
That was like on an album that they put out?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that Morrissey's trying to be a bit funny.
Okay. I wasn't
Also-
sure how to take it.
I don't think he's ever had a girlfriend in his life.
No, after that. It sounds like he did it.
That one. Yeah. He's got a weird relationship with women, actually, Morrissey. He calls them fatties and stuff. It's in his songs. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Smiths and then Air. So the big
Air
bands
was
to
still
me,
in your teens, or was that in your 20s?
Air. I was introduced to Air by Peter Thompson at the cinema.
Yeah.
He was like, you should listen to this electronic French band called Air. And then I listened to Moon Safari, and I was like, that. A couple of these bands, Michael Jackson, Coldplay, Radiohead, and Air are the 4. I don't know how many I just counted then. 4 bands.
Michael Jackson, Radiohead, Coldplay, and Air. I don't know how many that is, but
Well, I forgot. I couldn't remember how many I said. They were the 4. That's when my taste changed trajectory. I can't say that word.
each of those were
Trajectory.
sort of tent poles, like pivot
Game
points.
changes.
And what did Air push you towards?
Air pushed me towards like chill electronic
Sort of housey stuff.
more like electronic music. No, not house.
Where does jazz come into all this?
Jazz is just sitting underneath all of this the whole time. Like,
Were you playing jazz through all this, or listening to it, but never at a point where it was like, this has radically affected everything else I'm listening to?
Never at a point where I'm like listening to like one jazz artist like exclusively, like I would of all these other bands.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, so
Yeah,
what was your most recent discovery or pivot point then? What's been the most recent big obsession?
The most recent big obsession.
Something that's changed what you've been into or listening to. Can I throw a potential suggestion?
Yeah.
I feel like you listen to a lot of film scores, and I
Yeah,
wonder
I do.
whether that's come along sort of either because of working at the cinema or subsequent to that. But like, you seem to listen to orchestral soundtrack kind of stuff more than you once did.
I think that probably when I saw There'll Be Blood, I went and saw There'll Be Blood at the cinema only because Johnny Greenwood. I knew that Johnny Greenwood was the composer,
Yeah.
so I was like, I don't know what this film is. I don't know who Paul Thomas Anderson was. I don't know what Daniel Day-Lewis is. I was going to see this because of
Loved
Johnny
Paul
Greenwood.
Dano, yeah.
Loved Paul Dano though. Big, yeah. That was probably like one of his breakthrough roles, that one. And that film score is... I went there to pay attention to the film score because I was so in love with Radiohead. And then hearing that score put to the film, which was visually so...
Gripping.
yeah, I don't know. There's not even a word that covers it. That was like, film scores are a thing that I can listen to now independently of the film.
Yeah.
And then like searching composers like John Bryan and stuff like the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind score.
Yeah.
Um, I used to get stoned a lot though back then, and it would be more fun to listen to scores when I was like walking around the city of Adelaide stoned.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always had like a bit of a preference for like the chill, the more like chiller kind of sounds.
Yeah.
Chiller sounding things,
Yeah.
rather than anything like abrasive
Yeah.
or rocky. Rocky yucky.
You've liked some rocky songs, but only if
Yeah.
they're from bands that you already like.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's flip the switch, flip the table, flip the anal.
Let's flip the anal.
Let's flip the anal.
Okay. First CD I ever owned was a present, and it was Hanson. I don't know if I'd explicitly asked. I think I probably did explicitly ask for it. It was a birthday present. I went through like a boy band phase, I think, in like the early 90s. So that was one of them. There was one called Five.
Oh, Five will let you get down.
yeah.
Now, I love that song.
It was very good for the time. I don't think I ever did like NSYNC or anything, but there was just like, that was sort of my first sort of, I guess, the first things that were mine that I owned. My sister was into music more at that age, I think, than I was. She was all in the Spice World kind of zone at that time and that kind of thing. And I hadn't really got into that, I don't think. I don't know what I was doing or listening to. Maybe it was like I was more interested in games and that sort of stuff at that time rather than music. This is when I was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, something like that. And then gradually, I think I became more aware of the stuff that my dad was listening to.
Oh yeah, because you would have had your dad. So your dad the whole time was showing you the ropes a little bit.
A little bit. It's hard for me to remember explicitly. I think some of the first exposure I had to a lot of different bands was my dad had a vineyard in Narracourt, and sort of 3 hours out of Adelaide in South Australia. And we would often go down there on the school holidays and do work on the vines and check out the growth of all the grapes and that sort of stuff. And that was a 3-hour drive, which for a child is fucking eternity, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we'd have one of those little portable DVD players, and other times, you know, Dad would just put music on in the car and we'd just listen to it. And that, I'm pretty sure, is the first time and place that I listened to OK Computer, is because Dad had a CD of it and was putting it on the car. And, you know, you're a kid, you don't have any control over it, so you're just listening to this music. Yeah. Same with Kid A, I think, as well. But that's probably jumping ahead a little bit. So mid-90s, I was kind of in that sort of boy bandy group, and then a little bit of the like Savage Garden. Mum would listen to Natalie Imbruglia, that sort of thing. So a little bit of the Australiana stuff. I think at the end of that decade, that's when stuff like Powderfinger and Silverchair were coming through a little bit, either late 90s or early thousands, and you'd hear that on the radio.
They were Silverchair and Powderfinger probably headed up the Triple J Hottest 100s back then.
Yeah, they were the top of the 2001, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so that was sort of the 90s. And also, if you're in the car with Mum on the way to school and stuff, it was just like SAFM, or I think Nova came in at that sort of time. So it was kind of whatever was the pop music of that era. Then around that time, when I probably got to like the early thousands, that's when sort of Coldplay came out. I listened to Parachutes a lot. Again, that was one of the albums that my dad would put on in the car and we'd hear a bit. I also had some like close family friends. They were Triple J people, and our family wasn't Triple J. And so they would have the CDs of the Hottest 100, and they'd put that on, and that was like hearing music that I'd never heard before. So, and stuff that I don't think I really liked. But it's, you know, often when you encounter new music for the first time, you're like, this doesn't taste like what I like.
I remember seeing the video clip for Yellow before I even knew who Coldplay were. And when you hear what, like you said, like if your parents are listening to like SAFM and stuff, it's all like quite polished, quite like pitch perfect kind of sound,
and it's the same like musical
same
formula,
kind of
right? Like it's A B bridge, and another chorus, right?
Yeah. And then when I heard Chris Martin walking down the beach, going like with his he was kind of really rough around the edges, and I wasn't used to it. And I was like, who let this guy make a song?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the Triple J stuff as well. Like when we went on family holidays together, our two families, whenever we were in their car, they'd have Triple J on, and sometimes it'd do that thing, be like language warning, and like the parents would like leave the radio on. They didn't care about it, and so we'd hear like swearing on the radio, and I was like, "Oh, what?" He said the S word on the radio. So, you know.
What was the S word?
Slut.
Nice.
No, it was probably shit. So then early thousands, when I think I started to actually have my own tastes. That's when the internet had kicked in a little bit, when LimeWire was just starting to come up, when we had laptops at school, so you could like have your own digital music library that was separate to like the home PC. It was different to your CD collection, that kind of stuff. And that was when you sort of had access to so much more, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the era in which my dad had got a copy of OK Computer from his work business partner's son, who'd burnt like a copy for her, who's probably like 5 years older than I was, and handed it over and said, hey, you should try this. And then we had a copy of Kid A the same way. That was this like terrible quality MP3 rips, which I had burnt onto my computer for probably 15 years before going back and realizing that they were like 96 kilobyte per second, like terrible quality versions. And I genuinely, when I finally like bought that album again, or like did my own burn of a copy of the CD that I think that I had it legitimately at that time, I discovered that the MP3 version of Kid A I had was so bad that there were skips in the track, which I thought were just musical choices. I thought that Optimistic, like 20 seconds in, would just bloop and then skip forward. Like,
dude, that's so weird. Optimistic, I remember distinctly. Optimistic skipped for me as well.
And then it would jump to like the first verse. And I was like, that's just like, it's this weird kind of off-kilter thing. And then I listened back to the real album for the first time at good quality. And I was like, holy shit, there's so much more in this than I thought there was, including like the bonus track at the very end, like a minute after motion picture soundtrack, like the music, like the droning stuff comes back in. I was like, what the fuck? How can I have listened to this album for 15 years and now feel like I'm listening to it for the first time? So that sort of, when I was like going down to to Naracoorte with my dad and listening to this kind of music and actually starting to get the taste for it, that was pretty like formative. The other thing which was happening simultaneous along this was I was playing violin from age 5. So part of that was having to do like Suzuki kind of classical violin pieces and that sort of stuff, none of which I really enjoyed. But then in middle school, I decided I wanted to learn piano. And this was probably, I guess, 2001 I started. And after learning the basics and finding that a lot easier to pick up compared to violin, where you had to put your finger in the right place and do a whole combination of bowing and things to actually make it sound even remotely nice. When I was learning piano, it was like all in a row, and I could read music already. And all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so easy! Why did I do it in this order?" If it started with piano and gone back to violin, that would have made a lot more sense. Yeah. But I ended up with a piano teacher who was real jazz focused and real sight read focused, and I didn't want to do exams. I never did music exams, but because of that, finally I broke free of like the classical kind of teaching stuff that I was having to do, and was able to pick up a little bit more of the enjoyment of playing that music. But that kind of underpinning, particularly the string stuff, because I was in orchestras and things at school, meant that I had more of a taste for, I suppose, the classical and the string side of things, which will sort of come to play later.
So that's interesting that you developed like an appreciation for it, despite the fact that you didn't really want to play the violin. Is that, am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, I did like playing the violin, but it was so much more effort. Like doing practice for violin was always like, set this thing up and then play music that I didn't really care about for a teacher who didn't really get that I wasn't interested in it to be like to do an exam for it and get like an accreditation for my skills on it. But
there's nothing worse than listening to someone practice violin.
Yeah, exactly. And the string orchestra and the chamber orchestra stuff in high school was a lot better because you were playing stuff like a little bit more pop hits or a little bit more variance on it. So like we did Eleanor Rigby and some Beatles tunes and that sort of stuff. You're like, okay, this is cool. And like we did the Lord of the Rings soundtrack and that sort of stuff. You're like, okay, like there is other music outside of just Bach. So that was sort of an underpinning. I think the next sort of big, so I hit Coldplay. I did exactly everything you said, which was LimeWire, downloading every track you could. That was sort of simultaneous to Radiohead coming up. I think Hail to the Thief was 2003, and that was when 2004 I think was when I took my learner's test, and after I could drive, I got a car, and so then I could put music in my car that I wanted to listen to, and I just hammered Hail to the Thief like over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of associated with like, again, coming into my own tastes and like a sense of adulthood freedom in a really sort of compelling way. There was another band in sort of the early thousands that I was surprisingly into that if you go and listen to, might surprise you. But it was a band called Dredg, Dredg.
I remember you talking about them at the time.
And they, as it turned, they were California based, I think. Basically alternative rock / verging on metal, like quite aggressive prog rocky kind of sound. And I found some songs. I found them in the most nerdy way possible, which is I think someone had made a video game trailer and just stuck this song underneath it. And I've listened to it. I like the game, and so I went and found the album. And then I listened to this band through 5 subsequent albums that came out, and they were really quite different to everything else I was listening to at the time. But that was quite, as I said, quite hard in a way that was different to my other sort of musical experiences. And I think I enjoyed that. I think in year 10 or something, we had an assignment where you had to juxtapose 2 pieces of media together. You had to find like a poem and compare it with a song, like the lyrics of a song, or compare 2 songs to each other and like do a literary criticism of them and their themes and comparisons and that sort of stuff. And I did a Dredg song and I read a Coldplay song, I think, back to back in year 10, which was potentially not to everyone else's taste in the the class when you had to play the excerpts and then explain the lyrical similarities. But yes,
this is what this Coldplay song means to me.
Yeah.
Shut up, Nick.
Other people were playing rap songs and cool music, but I was unafraid.
You were like, I'm about to school these bitches.
Yeah.
In school.
And I won. And then sort of, I think my next big one would have been, because in that era as well at school when people had laptops and the, computer revolution was kicking off with the iPod and everything, MP3s were flying wildly everywhere, and you'd have like just masses of music that people would download into their libraries and just, taste test, effectively. And at that point, one of my friends, Kingsley, gave me a track by Andrew Bird, which I loved. And then, like a year later, thought, I wonder if this Andrew Bird has any other songs other than this first song. And so I went and found, I think that was Armchair Apocrypha at that time. And that, as I said, because I'd already had this kind of classical and violin background, I found someone who played violin in a way that wasn't classical, but that was actually, almost pop or alt indie kind of flavor to it. And that kind of broke my brain a little bit. I was like, how can he take this instrument, which I've been taught is a classical instrument, which sits in the background, and Eleanor Rigby, like chug, 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 just that's the only way in which they can be used in a pop music sense. And then discovering that you could actually do so much more with it, that was really kind of eye-opening for me. And that's why I fell so hard for Andrew Bird, because he's a fucking maestro, but his musical sense is not classical. And that was one of those core kind of discoveries. I think that was a real revelation, both in terms of what I was interested in and also what musically, as I was coming into the end of high school and doing a composition and arrangement stage 2 kind of course, that's what really influenced some of my early songwriting stuff as well.
So you were listening to Andrew Bird when you were in high school?
Yeah, right at the very end. It would have been, basically year 11 or 12.
Yeah, okay.
And then sort of next, I'll rattle through because it hasn't changed too quickly beyond that. But at some point I discovered Sufjan in mostly the same way. I think I had one of the early tracks from... maybe I had Chicago, I think, and then did the same thing of like, I like this song, I wonder what this other guy did. And really only kind of properly got into it when, I think in that intervening period between Illinois and Age of Odds. Sufjan Stevens, I don't know how closely you followed him, but he basically went away for years, and then he came back and he dropped this All Delighted People EP. And that was the first one where I was like ready for it, excited for new music. And then a week later, after that came out, he's like, okay, by the way, that was the EP, but here's my new album. And then dropped Age of Odds like a week after that. So all of a sudden I was, swamped in new music. And that was a big sort of game changer.
You can definitely see the Andrew Bird and Sufjan Stevens in the music the music that you've made, that you've ever shown me.
Yes.
Clearly those guys, like there's a real one thing I couldn't, like, I do like the Sufjans, but I could never crack Bird. But one thing that they share with your songwriting is this, like, there's like a complexity to, there's like, it's not necessarily chaotic, but there's a complexity to them that Andrew Bird to me is a tough listen, which is not like I like things that are tough listens. In my own like taste, but part of me thinks that like I'm not, like, I just don't get it. But I always like kind of admire it as well. Like even in your Christmas song, there's some really interesting chord things that I could never think, it would never occur to me to do those. And I've seen you do that. I've heard you do that a couple of times. So I'm like, I think maybe I just like don't get it or something. But like I also really kind of am in awe of it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about Andrew Bird as well. Like the fact that I think there's definitely a thing where, as someone who's played a bit of violin, I mean, anyone can look at a good violinist and be like, oh, they're doing a really good job. But if you've played violin and then you listen to a good violinist, you're like, this is fucking indescribably impossible. How the fuck is he doing this? How is this even something that anyone can do? Because his big thing, of course, is loop pedals and often layering himself on top of things. And that requires a kind of galaxy brain thinking in terms of, I'm laying down, this part of a chord, and then I'm going to go over it again, which sounds simplistic, but then it becomes like multi-tonal, and he'll use one thing and then slow it down 300% and drop that to like background noise and then go in a completely different chord or tonal direction on top of that. And yeah, I just find it absolutely breathtaking to watch, either live or to listen to in like a album setting as well. So yeah, I think you're probably right that maybe you don't get it in the sense that because it's so far removed from what you play or what you think in, it maybe does. I mean, I feel the same thing in reverse. Like I listen to when you put chords together in your music, I'm like, I don't know what keys to press to make the chords that you make. Do you know what I mean? And I think it is just what you're familiar with, right? Because we're all kind of we're all parroting other people's musical ideas.
Yeah. When I when I was learning, so I was learning sax throughout the whole of high school. That was my instrument. That was the thing from like year 6 to year 12. Like I was heading towards performance because my dad was my music teacher, so that was a given. I had to do that. But then Dad would always be at staff meetings after school, so Ben and I would finish our school day, and then we'd be waiting around for Dad in the music department, all to ourselves. And we were like, we got to kill like an hour and a half here. So there was a piano and a drum kit. So on the side of our instruments, we taught ourselves how to play. I was like, well, I'll take the piano, you take the drums, and then that way we can just like make music together, and then that'll kill 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So we basically taught ourselves that. But around that time, I was like, Coldplay, I still do it now. It's like you said, like the framework through which you think musically, it's kind of created by this language that you learn. Like I was just trying to like learn Coldplay songs. So a lot of my, even to this day, and then it was like Radiohead. So a lot of the things that my instincts musically, I've just fallen back on those.
Yeah. Well, I played like
ways.
you would go onto like Cordy and other like online sites which were archives and transcriptions of pop music, right? And I'd just download like Coldplay songs, or I'd get like the books and just play those tunes, right? So yeah I think it's whatever trained you. Interestingly, we both talked about Radiohead kind of in passing. Like I really, really fell into Radiohead hard, and by the time In Rainbows came out, first year of uni, Brand New World and this fucking incredible album drops, like I was gone. I was never gonna ever.
Wait, what one was it?
When In Rainbows came out, that was 2007. That was the first year that we were out of school.
Was it?
And
so
so
7.
yeah, I remember still listening to that album for the first time in like a dark room in like bedroom in our house that we were living in temporarily while our other house was being renovated. We'd moved out. And so I can still picture it, and I finished it, and then I just started it again straight away. Got to the end, and at some point Mum came in, she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Go away, I'm listening to the new Radiohead album."
That's exactly how I listened to Radiohead for In Rainbows for the first time. I was in a dark room during the day.
Yeah.
I think you probably linked it to me in a frenzy.
It's up, yeah.
Yeah. And I just like laid down on my bed and I was like, just going to listen to this. It's 3 p.m. And then as soon as it finished, I'm like, all right, guess we're doing it again.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's probably the other interesting thing about all that is we talked about how Radiohead was the big one for us both, but I find it fucking impossible to write a Radiohead sounding song. I just can't do it. Maybe I've come close once, but it doesn't seem to ever translate in what I'm actually composing. Like, I think it's too much of its own kind of magic.
Yeah, that's obviously true. But I think, melodically, like specifically, like a Tom York melody,
you could get close to.
Well, yeah, not get close to, but there's definitely been a few times where I've like played Ben a thing, and I'm thinking this for the melody, and he's just like, that's just straight up Tom York. You're just like copying Tom York, so it's like you wouldn't want to. It's not like imitating them, but like there is Yeah, there was a Radiohead sounding thing.
Well, that's probably the most universal aspect of it, though, right? Because instrumentation and arrangement and mixing wise, they're doing stuff that I don't have access to their crazy synths. I don't know their computer programs. I don't have a Godrich to add all this like audible shit around the corners that just confuses me. But when you get right down to the like a bass line or I suppose a drum sort of pattern, maybe that's a little easier.
I remember just quickly I just remembered when you were saying about the Coldplay thing that I did in year 12. I did a performance where I sung "Politic" by Coldplay.
Yeah,
we'd have like a weekly mass every Wednesday, and I had stopped going to mass at that point. But I was like, I want to play this song, and I got a couple of guys together that were in the year below me, and I was like, let's play this Politics song, and I sung it. And I remember I was in music class with like maybe about five or six other kids, and one of the guys there who was the best in the class was like a real jazz guy. I remember him making a comment to me after I did that performance, like later that day in class, and he was like, "What are the chords again? C dominant 7 to F minor, and then back to." And he just like made a joke that it was like the most simple chords of all time, and I remember just being like gutted and like embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then some kid said to me at a party that I sounded nasally.
Story of your life. There were two others which I'll throw out there briefly as well, just in references, then we can jump back into Coldplay. But there was a band Midlake, which I found in sort of, I guess, 2006 or 7, I think, end of high school. They were really sort of folky in a way that I hadn't got into before. And then there was this great group called Kashmir, which was a Danish band. And I don't remember how. I think actually it was recommended to me by someone who knew I liked Radiohead and who also liked Radiohead and was like, hey, this isn't quite Radiohead, but if you give it a go, you might get something out of it. And my first listen, I was like, this isn't Radiohead. And I listened to it again. I was like, this is still not Radiohead. And then I just kept listening to it. I was like, this is really good, though.
So unlike you to keep listening to something after not liking it initially.
Yeah.
And Patrick Watson? What about Patrick Watson?
I don't think I've ever really been like a crazy Patrick Watson person, but I did sort of properly get into Love Songs for Robots. And then, Wave was really good. But Love Song for Robots was the first one that I was like giving a good hammering to.
Yeah.
Should we do a little Coldplay wrap-up?
Yeah, sure. The Problem with Coldplay.
By Michael J. Zabrecki. You felt like you had a thesis on this.
I just don't know. Like, I don't listen to them anymore. I tried to give that new album a crack that you sent to me, and I haven't listened to like the last. Like, what was the last one I probably listened to was X and Y. I reckon.
Oh, really? No, Viva La Vida.
No, I didn't listen to the whole thing. That's when I like started to fall off.
Right.
But they were so like formative for my like early taste. And I really, really loved them. And they've since like, I don't know if I was too worried about seeming cool that maybe I like kind of flipped them off, or I mean maybe it was partly that, but then they've also, I mean, do you listen to them? They've got this rap that I don't think is really deserved. But there's something about Coldplay that people hate that they didn't used to. People used to love Coldplay.
I think it's Chris Martin. I think it's specifically Chris Martin. Because I don't think what's one of the other Berryman? Is that someone? Guy Berryman? Yeah.
The bass.
I think if you were like, oh, do you hate Guy Berryman? People would be like, I don't know who the fuck that is. You know, like I don't think any sort of association.
What's hateable about Chris Martin?
Oh, the whole Gwyneth Paltrow wankiness. You know, he's kind of that spiritual, kind of semi-sexual but dorky old dad. You know, named his kid Apple and all this. There was a lot of like celeb sort of crap
Yeah.
around him, right? The fact that he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm to be made fun of, right? Like that's him, right?
Yeah, but he did extras, and he's always made fun of himself.
I don't think that
Maybe.
he's unaware of this at all.
Yeah, I know. But that's the thing. Like, sure, if you're someone self-aware, that's like, then you're done. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't see him as that unlikable. I think it's that they became like a stadium band. Like, I think that's part of it.
I think it's even more. It's the fact that they were ambitious and they said, I want to be the biggest band in the world. And then they actively set out to be pop music, right? Not that they weren't always pop music, but to be pop music, to be the representation of the inheritors of U2, you know? Like, they wanted to be big, right? In that real, like, stadium.
But they also
way.
wanted to be Radiohead early on.
Yeah, probably early on. But I think once they became like studio successful, right, and 2-3 successful albums under their belt, I think interesting. It's funny they say that the last one you probably listened to was X and Y, because that was famously middling reviews, right? That was off the back of Rush of Blood to the Head, which was, again, the big sophomore success. Everyone loved it in the same way they liked Parachutes. Huge anticipation over the big third album. And then it came out and people were like, ugh, what are you doing? Which they kind of got back again when Viva La Vida came by and people were sort of on board with them. But I think it's actually really interesting to go back to that album. I don't know how recently you've listened to it.
Viva?
No, X and Y. I think that's actually a surprisingly good album.
So do I. I
in
loved
a way
it.
that it just didn't match with people's expectations.
I remember that they had a film clip for The Hardest Part that was the worst thing. I mean, apart from being a shit song, it was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But they had like Speed of Sound and
Speed of Sound, which was immediately, that was the label being like, we need another Clocks. Clocks was huge.
That was remarkably close to Clocks.
Yeah.
But
which is quite
I think maybe there's like an
interesting.
over sentimentality. Maybe is another reason why people kind of hate them, and because
it's heart on your sleeve, kind of.
Yeah, and once you've got like they kind of had their foot in both camps there for a while. They had like Rush of Blood to the Head. They were still like getting Triple J,
indie
bullshit, whatever, and then they became massive, and so the people that liked the kind of indie aspect or liked them being like their band or more of a rocky band, once they started to get more popular, they're like, oh, well, it's like kind of, they felt like traded, like being traded
any
against.
band which changes their sound on an audience that only liked one sort of taste from them is gonna, I mean, that's exactly how Radiohead lost half of their fans when they did Kid A, right? They just left their old sound behind and eventually came back to it. But yeah, I can understand people being like 3 albums in or 4 albums in and feeling like, hey, this isn't what Coldplay sounds like. Coldplay's like acoustic guitar and sort of walking alone down a sandy beach. And now you're like doing stadiums and
it's
talking
like
about
a lot
love
of like
and
crowd, like oohs and ahs.
Yeah. And
but like Kings of Leon had the same thing.
Singable.
Where like
Sorry, I was just going to say deliberately singable. Like, it feels like every chorus is designed to have like a hook, right? It's kind of, I think you can smell the machinery a little bit.
Yeah. And Kings of Leon had like a similar thing where they were adopted by like the Triple J kind of crowd, and then their next album was a stadium fist pumping, overly produced thing, and then that crowd was like, well, you're dead to us.
Yeah, no thank you.
And they turned on Kings of Leon in a similar way that they did to Coldplay, I think. So I think it's like a combination of all those things, like the sentimentality of it and the celebrity and the goop and the anal.
I think the I would, how far did you get into that most recent album? I listened to it out of curiosity. This is the, what's it called? Sunrises, sunsets, something, days, I forget. whatever their latest Coldplay album is them actively like taking a swing. It is very unmarketable in some surprising ways. There's a couple of like the singles that they have are the singles that they could choose from effectively, because there's like weird gospel songs and like strange piano music, and there's one really long kind of jazzy African beatsy style thing, and I was impressed by it, not in a way that I would necessarily go back to, but it was a genuine swing in the same way that a couple of albums back they did that song Midnight, which was kind of like a John Brion style like electronic groovy thing, and I was like, oh, I went
back to that recently.
Yeah.
And that's a good song.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting vocodery kind of thing.
Yeah. They what I think, we've talked about this previously, what I think that ultimately is most interesting about Coldplay is that they have actually changed their sound so many times in a way that alienated people at the start, but which now just keeps them current for a new generation of listeners that join in. You know, they did the fucking Imagine Dragons song, right? Like that they will, at whatever musical, pillar there is at any given era, they try and keep up with it each time. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But this album that they just put out is really not like anything they've done before. And I know that you can be cynical and say, well, it doesn't take much for Coldplay to step outside of their comfort zone. But in a way that I can't imagine it was commercially successful in the way that, any previous albums had been. You don't see them, performing on talk shows or anything like that. This is a kind of uncommercial album. Like, they took a swing, and I think that's where the credit should be handed, because they don't sound like what they used to sound like, and a lot of bands only ever sound like what they used to sound like.
That's true. I mean, they're interesting. I wonder if they'll ever if they'll be like hipsters will adopt them in like the year 2050.
Yeah, they go back. It'll be like listening to the 80s music. They'll listen to the 2030, they'll go back to the early thousands and be like, oh yeah, fucking Coldplay Brothers and Sisters EP, man, this is where it is. That's assuming society survives. Mm-hmm. If you've enjoyed this kind of chit chat, well, I'm glad good luck to you. You've got a lot of good recommendations. Go grab some Michael Jackson if you feel okay supporting a pedophile.
Don't grab some Michael Jackson.
You can get your Andrew Birds, your Sufjan Stevens, your Kashmir with a K, your Midlakes, your Radioheads, your Airs, your Coldplays,
your Brokers.
Good music. We'll put together a Spotify playlist. We should put together a Spotify playlist.
You and me?
Yeah.
A collab?
Yeah, collab. Let's put some shit together. In the meantime, send us your questions and comments and thoughts to deepfort@gmail.com. You can find us at facebook.com/deepfort or twitter.com/deepfort, soundcloud.com/deepfort for all of our amazing jingles and songs. And just leave us a good old 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts too while you're there. I have one factoid.
Cool.
I suppose it could be described as a fun fact. You got a fun fact. It's a fun fact. Oh, yeah. Oh, bring it back. So here's a little bit of a fun fact. Did you know that lemons aren't real?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Why are lemons not real?
So originally, there were basically only 3 citrus types, right?
Should I guess?
It's probably not worth it, but if you want, yeah.
Bananas?
Nope.
Okay.
There were true mandarins. There were citrons, citrons, and there were pomelos. There were 3 types of citrus. These are the original types of citrus plants, right? And every other type of citrus that you've ever heard of is a blend or a crossbreed or a hybrid of those three, including lemons, oranges, limes.
What?
All of these things are like clementines, sour oranges, grapefruits. All of these are crossbreeds. None of them are actually original plants that were, brought into the world that way. They've all been interbred and crossbred.
What?
So, yeah.
Wait, what's an original mandarin?
So that's a specific species. The C. reticulata is a true mandarin. But there are... because the citrus hybrids, they plants interbreed very easily. They mix genes very easily, and so you end up with different combinations of flavors. So the sour orange has the mandarin orange and the pomelo as parents, or the sweet orange has the mandarin orange and the pomelo as a grandparent, and this kind of thing. I can actually, if you open up your podcast player right now and have a look, you will see a triangular. You'll see a triangular graph which shows the degree of combination of various things and the way that the plants are interbred.
Wait, I don't recognize any of these names.
So pomelos, citrons, and mandarins are the corners, and then interbreeding with various degrees of parents and grandparents create the breeds in the middle. So a lemon is in the middle. Also, if you click on the chapter title, People with Podcasts, you can read this article for yourself. But basically, the takeaway is there's no such thing as a lemon tree. It was never born as an original species, never grew in the wild by itself. It was a cultivated hybrid by people crossbreeding different types of citrus together, and they made lemons, limes, and oranges, and all the almost common variants. None of them are real.
Fuck. I'd like to see a mango and a banana get. Oh, a mango and a grape.
Mañana.
That'd be cool. A mañana.
A mañana.
A manana.
Okay, see you later. That's a Spanish joke.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. Fruit is surprisingly interesting. Just it is. Because fruit exists. I swear we talked about this once before, but fruit exists so that it can be carried by birds and like little creatures, so that they can spread the seed. Like fruits are sweet, so that animals will want to eat it and then carry the seed so they can pollinate.
Yeah,
they're geniuses, man.
Yeah,
fruits is geniuses. Should I get that on a shirt? Oh, I gotta tell you this one thing really quickly, because I've been dying to tell you this, because I thought, of all people in my life, you're gonna be the guy that's gonna really feel my pain on this one.
Okay, I'm ready.
Went to a cafe, went and got a
soy flat white
vegan sausage rolls, right? And the girl asked me if I want. I got two. I got like a curry pie and a vegan sausage roll. She puts them in a bag, and she says, do you want any sauce? And I was like, yeah, give me some sauce. And she opens the bag. She holds the brown paper bag with my two pastries in there. And squirts the sauce all over it.
No, what?
I know, dude. I know. It was...
That is
unbelievable.
That is chaotic evil. Who the fuck? Who does that? Loose in the paper bag.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you.
God.
Just squirt it from a distance, from a height. Squirted the sauce into the bag. I'd already paid for it. I was too in shock. too shocked to do anything. Oh my God. Really.
I have PTSD now, and I wasn't even there.
I think I actually texted you immediately. I was like, I've got something to tell you. It was.
Oh, dude,
psychopathic.
I'm so sorry that
Thank you
had to go through that.
Thank you. It was
unbelievable.
I know.
I know. At that point, you are within your rights to just put the bag down on the table and walk out. Just a whole lot of nope, and then make an exit.
Yeah. I appreciate your support on this one.
What's worse is that it was like a car crash. When you said open the bag, I knew where this story was going,
yeah.
and I had to strap in because I was not ready for that turmoil.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you. I knew you were my guy on that one.
Yeah. Let's name and shame. Let's start a petition. Let's call Parliament. Let's send in SWAT. Let's dox her. Let's find her house. Let's break her window and kill her car.
I agree, man. I agree.